What's better than 0 runway? 1 week. What's better than 1 week? 1 month. What's better than 1 month? 3 months. What is better than 3 months? 6 months. What's better than 6 months? G'day, g'day, g'day. I'm Frank. I hope you're doing spectacular on this fine Wednesday. Now, let me paint you a picture. You've got stuck in a business, you have been going great guns, you've got a handful of clients, people are referring you on, cash flow is solidly covering all your bases, but out of nowhere, work dries up, clients go AWOL, and shit has seriously hit the fan. You've got nothing in the pipeline. You're thinking, fuck, what is it that you've forgotten or maybe not even planned for? Runway, my friends. Let's get into it. Okay, runway is an amount of money that you can fall back on as a business to get yourself off the ground confidently. Just like this little blue plane here of my son's to stay in the air with enough fuel to keep it going. If the fuel, aka your revenue, dries up, your plane comes crashing down. So runway is what covers your business expenses and overheads like your insurance, software, subscriptions, office costs in the event you don't have work coming in for a period of time. But it also means you can still pay yourself, as well as having living expenses covered. Be it rent, mortgage, payments, electricity, food, your kids' swimming lessons, car payments, phone bill, etc., etc., etc. So how much runway do you need to start a business? Well, the answer is 0. You can start a business without runway. However, what's better than 0 runway? 1 week. What's better than 1 week? 1 month. What's better than 1 month? 3 months. What is better than 3 months? 6 months. What's better than 6 months? 12 months. Okay, so let's map it out. Here is you, the little blue plane. Now, you might have the shortest runway ever, and you might be able to just take off with a strong headwind, which in other words means a couple of clients right out of the gates. But if that doesn't quite happen, or if those jobs are low paying and only cover you for a week, you come crashing back down. Now, if you have 3 months, well, you've got enough runway for a small private jet to take off, which means you can keep things up in the air for the journey till your next client job comes along. If you have 6 months, well, you're now a commercial jet and you have the wings to take you even further. But if you have 12 months or more, then you're the big ass A380 jumbo jet and you can relax up in first class. Now, apart from financial security, runway does something to our little designer egos. Because psychologically, runway interestingly gives us the confidence to charge what we want to charge without coming across as needy or desperate when a client tries to shirk you out of a $2,000 design job by only having a budget of $200. So if you had no money coming in at the time, the vast majority of designers would probably cave and take that $200, right? Money is money when times are tough, but also what happens is that you start taking on jobs that you don't want to do, and fuck, I've done a heap of those. But when time also isn't on your side and you're up to your eyeballs in 50 shitty $100 design jobs, you're gonna absolutely wanna neck yourself and you're probably gonna crumble like a house of cards, all because you're desperate for the small wins as you have no other choice to keep yourself and your head above water. Okay, so 3 to 6 months is generally the advised amount of runway among designers. Why? Well, it comes down to client job length. Now, I'm talking about mostly reasonably sized jobs that might take 2 to 3 months to get through your pipeline. And if you're thinking, no, it doesn't, factor in the initial client management at the start. You know, meetings, contracts, first deposit payments that could be 2 weeks or more right there. Then you get into the work and you might do 2 or more revisions, which might take 1.5 to 2 months of back and forth. Then you've got to invoice them upon completion. And if you're giving them 15 to 30 days to pay, you're now at 2 to 3 months. So why is this an issue? Well, if you've only got one job going at one time, cash flow is going to be real slim over the course of that time if this job doesn't cover those 2 to 3 months of expenses, which is something to be said for milestone invoicing, which I'm going to cover at another time because I don't think today's the day. So you could go a whole 2 to 3 months with nothing in between that first deposit and that final payment. Not to mention if the job goes sour and your final payment doesn't come in. So this is an example of why 3 months at least is a good starting point for most designers. Now, yesterday I put up a post about this on Instagram about how to figure out how much revenue you need to be bringing in each year to have a viable business. So if you realize that you need to have $50,000 to be bringing in after taxes for your living costs, superannuation and business expenses, this equates to having a pot of between $13,000 to $25,000 for 3 to 6 months runway, which I know could be money better spent towards something like a house deposit or shares. But if you're planning on going into business, this is the reality pill all of us need to swallow so that you avoid putting yourself in a situation of financial ruin and an ungodly amount of mental stress that I shit you not will compound. Okay, number one, put aside at least 10% of your earnings each week from your full-time, part-time, casual job. Now, to be fair, this might take a few years to build up, depending on your level of income. You could save more, or you could even contribute amounts like your tax refund into this little pot. The second option is to moonlight, side hustle, freelance, whatever you want to call it. And we'll get more into side hustling another day in its entirety. But if your plan is to go full-time business owner and you want to moonlight in addition to your current job, think of that extra income as contributing to your runway. It could be 100% of that revenue minus taxes, or it could be half that amount if the side hustle is there to support your lifestyle costs. But one caveat to this that I would say is just because you've saved up 3 to 6 months from your side hustle, or that 10% I mentioned before of your job earnings, doesn't mean you should go full-time business owner right away. There's a bit more to it, which I'm going to cover another day. And number 3 is that if you are fortunate enough to have a partner that earns enough to cover the both of you or your family's lifestyle expenses and go all out starting a design business, awesome. Which is in most cases likely going to be my fellow designers that are coming back from maternity leave. Ladies, if that's you, I know there are a few of you already out there following along and have kids and are getting back into the workforce part-time, which I can see why business is looking like an ideal fit. So my tip would be to treat every bit of revenue that comes in at the start, minus taxes and expenses, as your runway until you've built up that cushion. Okay, number 4, similarly, this goes for those of you guys who are still living at home with family. Living expenses are probably not on your plate, most likely apart from a small amount of like weekly board money. So you have home life to fall back on if the business doesn't work out. You realistically have a crazy amount of opportunity in your youth that many older designers won't have the luxury of, to more easily find work if needed, that will get you off the ground again and again and again if need be. But like I said in the last point, diligently put aside that revenue that your first jobs bring in until you've built up that runway. Okay, number 5, retainers. Now, this isn't at all a recommended way of doing things. This is purely my experience and I want to advise that this won't work for everybody, but I want to share my story nonetheless. So when I left my full-time job, I walked out of there with $0 in runway. But what I uniquely had was a retainer contract from that previous employer to keep working with them as their designer once I started G'day Frank. Now, this isn't the most secure safety net to trust in, I understand that, but as I mentioned before, psychologically, it gave me the confidence to not be desperate and not take on a heap of low-paying, shitty jobs that would eat up my time just to make ends meet. What it also meant was that I treated the 2 to 3 retainers that I had going in the first 12 months of this business as the bill payers. And anything on top of that was going to be mustard that would go into that runway pot that I didn't have when I started out. After 12 months, I now have around 6 months of runway, which is crazy, huh? But this is because we were also frugal with our revenue, only taking what we bare minimum needed each week to cover our living costs, while also holding aside amounts for tax, GST, superannuation, and various expenses, bills that the business would incur. So that's runway. It's something all of us can create from nothing without the need to have to ask a bank for a loan or your parents or your friends for help. So this is what's called calculated risk when you are considering whether or not a business is the right move for you, either when you're starting out after uni or you're looking to leave a job. So be wise about this, my friends. You'll no doubt succeed to be kick-ass design business owners, but be mindful of what Runway can do for your business. Now, that's the end of the video. I hope you like the new little set here we've got set up here. I'm using it between myself and Sam and appropriating it well. But if you have some questions about Runway, put them down in a comment below. Happy to answer them and share your advice if you've had some great or some bad experiences with Runway that people could learn from or gain some great advice from. So have a great day. Speak to you soon. Cheers.